Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the Parenting Through Challenges podcast. I am your host, Angie Grant, generational healing specialist. And today I want to talk about peer pressure and our kids and the influence that we have over that. I find that in today's society, or even when my kids were younger, I would think about this a lot, that how in the world do we help our kids to make good aligned decisions? Of course, I didn't know then what I know now about human design and the power that that gives us, but it goes so much deeper than that, right? When we think about our kids going along with the crowd, there are elements in our kids' designs that can maybe make that more likely for them. For example, kids who have an open G center are more likely to try to prove their lovability, or our kids who have an open will center are more likely to make decisions to prove their value, try to prove their worth. Or our kids who have an open head and ajna, they're much more likely to succumb to or to be influenced by peer pressure. But as I said, I think that it goes so much deeper than that because our kids aren't living in a bubble. Our kids aren't just their energetic designs living out their design, making decision by decision by decision. Our kids mirror what we do. And when I look at my own life, I look at the lives of the people that I love, I look at the lives of the people that aren't I'm not close to. I see that we have been trained to make decisions with our mind. We as a society, at least here in the States, have been trained that if we're going to make a good decision, we need to figure it out. We need to use our mind to evaluate all of the pros and cons and to come to a conclusion based on what kind of financial impact it will have, what kind of relationship impact it'll have, how it might impact our career or our living situation or something else. And if I'm being honest, I would say all of those things that we're taking into account are really fear-based decisions. When we're making decisions with our mind, we're letting the fear part of our anatomy take over. When we're making a decision about whether or not we have enough money for it, really what we're saying is, I'm afraid that I can't afford it, or I'm afraid if I spend that money, I won't ever earn more, or that I won't be able to replace what I'm taking out of my savings account. It's that fear that we're not supported, fear that there isn't really abundance. Or when we're making decisions based on how we think that other people in our lives might react to it, that too is a fear-based decision. We make decisions because we're afraid if we decide something else that people won't like us, or they won't love us, or they won't value us, or they won't invite us over to their house anymore. Again, a fear-based decision. I think that we as humans make decision after decision after decision out of fear. Sometimes fear of avoiding what we think is going to be worse. Oftentimes fear of repeating the past, or fear that what we've heard could happen will happen. But what I know is that just because something's happened in the past doesn't mean that it's inevitable to happen in the future. It hasn't yet happened. I think that we have the power to create space for the past to repeat itself. I think that as humans, we're really good at that actually, because of this fear. We're afraid that if we, make X decision, that the same thing will happen again and again. I think about how this applies to my relationship with my son. I lived in a constant state of fear in my relationship with him for so many different reasons. But I think the biggest fear was that past behaviors were going to resurface and continue and get bigger and become more dangerous. This is the fear that kept me up at night, that kept my body in a high adrenaline state at all times, morning, noon, and night for years. This fear was ever present and was a guiding factor for all of my decisions, including my decision about how I was going to show up for my son. Even though my mind was saying, he just wants my love. I, I do love him. I need to show up for him. My fear will always win when we let it. When we don't know that, when we don't have that awareness about what's really happening there. And so the fear was taking over. And so I had this fear that his behaviors would continue. And so then I would show up in the moments with my son with that fear, driving the way the words came out of my mouth, driving the way that the way my facial expressions were, the way that my body posture was, the energy that I was putting into the space that we shared. That fear was ever present, and he knew that. So when I think about what I first started talking about today, this idea of really peer pressure proofing our kids, it starts with us learning, one, having that awareness that as humans, most of our decisions are fear-based and we make them with our mind. And that as humans, as mammals, we were not designed to make decisions with our mind. We all, as humans, as mammals, have this inner knowing, this instinct about what's right for us. Some of our knowing is about what's right for our family, what's right for our community, what's right for humanity. But at the core, every human has this ability to know what's right for you. Human design shows us how to tap into that, shows us how to align with that, and how to make decisions that are aligned with you. And then once you've made a decision, of course, use your brilliant mind to figure it out. But my point in saying all of this is that we want our kids to make decisions that are internally aligned. We don't want our kids to make decisions that are based on some external person or theory or idea. We want our kids making decisions that are right for them so that when they're put in a position where, their group of friends is offering them drugs or encouraging them to, go steal a car or to, I don't know, try smoking for the first time, whatever that peer pressure thing is. If we can teach our kids how to make internally aligned decisions, we can then trust that they'll make decisions that are right for them. And those things that we worry about peer pressure, they won't even be a worry because as humans, we're not designed to do immoral things, right? We do those things when we're out of integrity, when there's this mismatch between what our soul wants us to do, what our inner knowing wants us to do, and what our mind is deciding. When there's a mismatch, that's when behaviors come. That's when people get out of integrity because there's a mismatch. And so, how in the heck do we do this for our kids? How do we teach our kids to tap in to making decisions that are aligned for them so that they can be peer pressure proof? Well, it starts with you. It starts with you not teaching them. It starts with you showing them. It starts with you really learning how to tune into what your body is telling you and really learning how to tune into what that inner knowing really feels like for you. It is a little different for all of us. For those of us who are generator types through human design, we have this gut, this sacral response that has a sound to it. It's a bit of a grunt or an uh-huh or uh-uh. And then for non-sacral types or non-generator types, there are different ways of knowing. Some of it is an intuitive knowing, some of it is a sensing or a feeling or, like having, being able to visualize things. There's so many different ways that we know, and the map to that is outlined in our human design chart. I didn't know this about myself a couple of years ago. And I remember before I really started digging into human design, really what prompted this podcast was that, and I know I recorded an episode about this a little while ago, but what prompted me to create this podcast in the first place was that when things were so incredibly hard with my son, there was a part of me that knew that he just needed a hug. But my mind was full of external ideas, full of what the experts were saying, full of what family members and friends and the professionals that I worked with, what all of these people were saying. My mind was full of that, these external decision makers that I allowed into my head unknowingly. And we all do it, right? It's not that anything went wrong with me, but now I know. But when things were so incredibly challenging with my son, I let external forces guide those decisions for me, even though I would have these fleeting moments where my gut would just tell me or drive me, just give him a hug. And then my mind would quickly kick in and say, oh no, that is not what the experts are telling you to do. That will reinforce his behaviors. Now is not the time for a hug. And I, like all other humans, because that intuition is so quick and fleeting. And when we don't follow it, it becomes more quick and fleeting because we're essentially training our body, training our whole system to not notice, to say that, you know what, yeah, thanks, intuition, but you're not important. I know better than you do, which isn't true, right? These experts that are outside of me, yeah, they've done research, they've written books, they've done all of these fabulous things. And none of them were in my home, in my relationship, sharing energy with my son in those moments. None of them were. And the same is true for you. So when you think about how does this apply to your kiddos, I genuinely hope that you seek understanding how to make decisions that are aligned for you. Whether you grab a chart from my website or somebody else's, do what feels comfortable to you. But human design has this beautiful way to show you how to make decisions that are aligned with you. And if you get your chart and you don't know how in the heck to find that, I'm happy to help. But when we start making decisions and verbalizing what we're doing to our kids, explaining that, you know what, I've had these experts tell me how I'm supposed to move forward with this, but actually I want to trust my gut. I want to trust my intuition. I was noticing some posts on social media today, and these moms were talking about how they were seeking advice about burnout in the workplace and wondering what to do. And the post was something along the lines of, I'm so burnt out at work. I get there and I'm, frustrated and annoyed and reactive. And then I get home and I just crash on the couch and I can't do anything else. And this mom was saying, I don't know what to do. And people had all kinds of advice about what she should do. But none of the advice, until I hopped on there, but none of the advice encouraged her to really check in with herself. She, like all of us, has been so trained to seek outside advice. And so she has all these fears making her decisions for her, right? This fear of what if I quit my job and the next job pays me less? And what if I can't afford the things? Fear of, I don't know, maybe the overwhelm of starting a new job, the fear of maybe losing friends at your current job, right? Like all these fears, I'm sure, were driving her decision or her. I mean, I would say lack of a decision, but she's making a decision to not make a decision, right? That is her current decision, is to stay in this place of frustration and burnout and overwhelm. And and if she were able to tap into her inner knowing, the decision would be easier. And I'm not saying, right, like your gut says, quit the job, you don't belong there. Something much better is coming along for you. That doesn't mean then that the planning and and figuring out how to put it into action is necessarily easier. If I'm being honest, sometimes the things that our gut tells us to do are terrifying and go against what our mind has been telling us is what we need to do. I know that people stay in miserable relationships for way longer than their gut was telling them to. People stay in jobs for way past the burnout stage, even though their gut had given them so many moments of saying, you don't belong here. And we'll hear it and we ignore it and we stuff it. And then we go back to our mind and convince ourselves we need to stay because nobody else will hire us. I know that's the position that I was in my job, that I was miserable at my job. But I had convinced myself and let other people's thoughts around me convince me that I would never make as much as I was making there and that I wouldn't find a job that I enjoyed because I had moved up to a leadership position and leadership makes more than staff who are working directly with clients. That's what I convinced myself of. And I, as I record this podcast here today, can tell you that that is so incredibly untrue. That every part of my story that I had convinced myself of because of external decision making, none of it was true. But I was so freaking convinced that it was. So here's my challenge for you is one, get your human design chart if you haven't already and dig into it to understand what your decision-making strategy really is and start practicing it. It won't be natural. It won't be easy. It'll be really clunky if you haven't been doing this for a while, but the payoff is exponential. Because when we stay in the space where we're letting our mind and external factors make decisions for us, it continues to create more and more of a friction in our own body. Because your intuition knows what's right for you. And your mind is trying to figure out how to stay out of that fear space by using more fear. It's the weirdest thing, right? But when we're in that decision-making space where there's this huge disconnect between our gut and our mind, it creates stress in our body, which then shows up as physical pain, as getting sick more often, as not being able to heal our body in the way that our body is designed to do. It isn't just about a decision to quit your job or a decision about, maybe selling your house or getting a home equity loan, right? It isn't about the decision per se. It's about that mismatch between your mind and what your gut is telling you or what your intuition is telling you. So that's my challenge. Get your human design chart and understand your decision-making strategy and start putting it into action. And when you do that, talk about it out loud around your kids. Talk to your kids about how you've spent the last few decades making decisions with your mind, and it's time to start listening to your gut. Because when we can show that to our kids and then get their charts too, right? Get your kids' charts and really help them understand and really tap into and take the time to make decisions that are aligned for them. Because right now, obviously I can't speak for you, but I think that I can speak for most of humanity, at least the humanity in my life, in all aspects of life. Most of humanity makes decisions with their mind and then creates their own burnout because we're deciding things that aren't right for us. We're deciding things that don't match with our purpose. They don't match with our energy. They just don't match with us. And then we're left suffering the consequences and then afraid to leave that decision. So let's show our kids, let's break this cycle and show our kids how to do it in a more aligned way for a couple of reasons. One, we see that all around us, fear is driving our kids, it's driving us, it's causing so much chaos and havoc. And we have to do something different. And I firmly believe that starting with us and making more aligned decisions gets us out of that fear space, which puts us in a better space to help support our kids. It puts us in a better space to really start making changes in what's happening in our schools and what's happening with our kids. When we can trust that our kids are more and more bully proof because we've done our job to help our kids tap into their intuition. Oh man, just imagine how much more peaceful it will be to send your kids to school or to their friend's house or off to their first job or out driving on their own. Just imagine how much more peaceful that will be when we can really trust that our kids are making decisions that are aligned for them instead of succumbing to peer pressure, which can be so tricky and scary for us parents. So, I would love to hear your thoughts about this concept, I'd love to hear your questions about how to really step into your decision-making strategy. So reach out when you're ready. And this is the work that I do. So if you are ready to take that next step for you and your family, I'd love to chat. My contact info is in the show notes. I'd love to see you for a connection clarity call. So until next time, uh, keep making aligned decisions and we'll chat soon.